So, in the first part of today's conference, we will start with the region which is, well, most affected by the situation and the fate of the refugees. We tried to invite the largest possible number of participants from this region. My name is Viola Raheb, and I'm a teacher at the University of Vienna, teach comparable religion, and I'm one of the organizers of this conference. A warm welcome to all guests in this round. And well, there are two neighboring countries of Syria, particularly represented here at the table, and those are the countries which have taken in the largest number of Syrian refugees who had to flee their home countries. So let me introduce my guests. I would like to start in a chronological alphabetic manner. We have Mr. Mohammed Al-Kilani. Oh, unfortunately, he has just arrived. He has not taken a seat yet. Mohammed Al-Kilani is the Deputy Secretary General of the Jordan Hashemite Charity Organization for Relief and Development in Jordan. On my right-hand side, Musaf al-Shawawa, Deputy Mayor of Amman in Jordan. Then Mrs. May Al-Eid, a Syrian activist and asylum seeker in Austria. And she is, well, the answer is still pending for her asylum procedures. From the Lebanon, Georges Antoun, from Mercy Corps. Then we have Christian Berger from EEAS, the European External Action Service. Mrs. Marwa Bustani from the UN Habitat Program of the United Nations. She has come from Lebanon. Then we have Lorenz Hengel from the ADA, the Austrian Development Agency in Austria. Then we have Udo Jans, former director of the UNHCR office in New York. Then we have Margareta Marley from the organization Médecins Sans Frontières in Austria. Ali Mata, he is the mayor of Sahel al-Sarani and Lebanon. Mrs. Balid Abedrakom from the Jordan Response Platform for the Syrian Response Crisis. Hassan Rohaibe, the mayor of Al Jamal in Jordan. And last but not least, Mr. Nazem Saleh, the mayor of Marij in Lebanon. Again, a warm welcome to all of you to Austria. It's a great pleasure to have you here and that you have come to Vienna in spite of all the challenges you are struggling with on a daily basis. Well, this region here comprises the largest number of Syrian refugees, and according to the latest statistics prepared by the UN dating from this year, this region of the Middle East currently 404,700,000 Syrian refugees who stay in this region. A major number of these refugees has been taken in by a small country, the Lebanon, 1.1 million, and Jordan has taken in 630,000 Syrian refugees, and these refugees live in those two countries. Let me add that these two countries also have lots of Palestinian refugees alongside the Syrian refugees. Since 1948, both Jordan and the Lebanon have had Palestinian refugees, and they also live their lives as refugees in these two countries. If you permit, I should like to start with the Lebanon. Ali Matar, the mayor of Sahel al-Sarani in the Lebanon. Sahel al-Sarani is located at the south of the Lebanon. It is a very important region for the Lebanon. And this region has succeeded in taking in lots of refugees. Good morning, Ala Mata. The floor is yours. Good morning. I would also like to thank you very much for inviting me, and we just have a few minutes here, so I do not want to start with long introductions, but I want to start right in the middle by presenting the Lebanon. Until 1922, the Lebanon and Syria were one country because of the agreement of Sykes-Picot. And this fact that these two countries are so close then led to a special relationship between those two peoples. After the Second World War of 1948, we have taken in lots of Palestinian refugees as brothers and sisters. We suffered in these last few years with the people. We had lots of wars, the Israeli identity, this Israel as we call it. And nevertheless, we have undertaken every effort to build up a state. And although we always strove to build up infrastructure, Israel succeeded in constantly destroying the infrastructure. After 2011, when the infrastructure has once again been destroyed, we also have to tackle another challenge, the huge number of Syrian refugees. Syrian refugees who are our brothers and sisters, since we used to be one country until 1922. So we welcomed them. We opened our gates, our doors, our apartments. We opened our hearts for these people. And we tried to share everything we had at our homes with them. We provided them with food. We strove to provide infrastructure opportunities to them. But because of the economic crisis, the political crisis the Lebanon is currently facing, it is particularly difficult for the Lebanon today, and it is getting increasingly difficult in dealing with such a huge number of refugees. And this is just the official figures, 1,100,000, which were registered by the United Nations. But apart from that, there are several an additional number, 100,000, who also live in Lebanon without having been registered, without having registered with any authority. And those people who, cross the open borders illegally, and we still have open borders with Syria. They come to the country illegally, and nevertheless, we provide them with all services and the infrastructure we have, and we share with them everything we have. The Lebanon reacts, and it reacted before any other organization reacted. And we just had to react because of our gut feeling. We did it because of our heart, and we did it, and we help, and our people in the Lebanon has opened their homes. They have taken in refugees. They have offered everything to them, everything they needed. Very often we saw people from the Lebanon who took ill people from Syria to the hospitals, and myself am one of these persons. And I really took two women who were pregnant. I took them to the hospital, and I even paid for their cesarean. So this is just a little bit of what is happening. Often at 2 o'clock in the morning, a telephone rings, and the mayor's office informs me that another Syrian family has arrived. And now we provide them accommodation in the mayor's office, and we strive to help them in any way. So the family who crossed the border came to our city in the middle of the night during winter. And you mustn't forget, how do these families feel like when they have to spend the nights in winter without a sofa, without a chair, without a mattresses, without anything at all. And during these nights, often at 9 o'clock in the evening, at 9:30, we were faced with the challenge of having to provide lots of mattresses to people, a lot of food to people, and nevertheless we succeeded in making sure that within 1 hour or 1.5 hours, these things arrived at the people in need in the middle of the night at 9 o'clock in the evening. We succeeded in providing all of the services, the food, the relief services, so make sure that the families had the things they needed. So this is direct assistance. And I'm sure that the same holds true for Austria. There are people who help, who also know that they have to help immediately on the spot. And well, the Lebanon is the fact is that 40% of the inhabitants in the Lebanon are refugees from Syria. And this is a disaster for us, in fact, because we can no longer make ends meet. The country itself is undergoing a major economic crisis. The political situation we are facing is also a difficult one. So there are just limited resources. We have at our availability and we share that. So please, this is an appeal. Help us to help the Syrian refugees. Thank you so much. And there's just one thing I wanted to mention. I try to be as brief as possible, but just give me 1 minute, please. We all have to undertake efforts to develop projects, put projects together which are sustainable with a long-term focus, which provide long-term benefit and a benefit which can be used by all refugees. So projects that are good for the Syrian refugees and the Palestinians in the country. We are one people, and we do not consider ourselves as well somebody else. We do not. We. You mustn't forget, we used to be one people and we were able to move freely between borders. Thank you very much, Ali Mata. I know that you are facing major difficulties. It is very hard to speak about, well, some distress you have seen for 4 years, the Syrian refugees in this region. And then you have just 7 minutes to speak about it. We know that the time allotted is much too short. We understand that Mazam Saro, the mayor of Maresh and the Pekah rally of the Lebanon, and this region has also taken in lots of Syrian refugees.
Please report on your experience as a mayor of Marich in dealing with the refugee inflow and the support given to them. First of all, I should like to thank the initiators and organizers of this conference. This initiative is really welcome. I should like to thank you for this invitation. Lebanon is a small country. It only has 10,425 square kilometers. We have about 4.5 million inhabitants. And now we have roughly 2 million refugees in our country, which means 1.1 million Syrian refugees in accordance with the last UN statistics, and about 600 or 700,000 Palestinian refugees. We have figures that show that roughly 60 million refugees are found in the world as a whole, and the 1.1 million is not a large number, but nevertheless, we are confronted with a lot of challenges, and we have to come to take this up. And let us consider the eastern part of the country. For Syrians, it's easy to reach the Lebanon, and the plane in the east in Lebanon, they can drive for half an hour and they will get there. And in the beginning, we welcomed our Syrian sisters and brothers. We had compassion with them, and we thought this would last for 1, 2, or 3 months, and then we would be able to find a solution at the level of the international community of states and to come up with solutions. We tried to work with the refugees. We tried to give them all the support that we were able to give. We cooperated with the United Nations, with the UNHCR, and we succeeded in the beginning to deal with the initial numbers of refugees, but today the number is overwhelming. We have 20,000 Syrian refugees, and these 20,000 refugees are now accommodated in various new buildings, former shops that were converted into flats and so on, flats that were newly constructed and which are still only a shell and not fully furnished. And 1/3 of the Syrian refugees are still in tents, and they are in tents because we do not have a political decision yet. There is no support from the international community of states that could help us to accommodate these Syrian refugees somewhere else. So we have to offer them tents. That's the only way. And another problem that we have is the fact that the owners of real estate do not easily rent out to the refugees. We have a lot of environmental problems because of this large number of inhabitants. We don't have the infrastructure that is sufficient. So the minimum requirements with regard to water supply, to sewers and so on is not there. And very often the refugees have to cross some patches of sludge and of wastewater, this in order to reach the tents. So we need support from the international organizations, from the international community of states, and we also miss a decision of the Lebanon itself. So those people who were expelled, of course, have to receive support. We realize that they were expelled from their country, that they need our support, that they suffered a lot, that they had a lot of pain. But we are a country that has a limited number of resources. In winter, for example, we have floods very often, and this is another problem. We have to cope with this as well. You may have seen these news on the TV screens, news about these floods. You will also have seen news about the camps and the tent camps, and also the tremendous efforts made by the communities to create the basics of an infrastructure for these refugees. You all know that our state authorities are not very rapid. They do not have a lot of courage. They do not have the initiative. The civic society does not have many initiatives. We have only few NGOs that would support the refugees. This large number of Syrian refugees constitutes a problem, and it's a tremendous burden for our state and for the infrastructure. As I said, the infrastructure in Marich is really oriented to 15,000 refugees. Now we have 20,000, and we have even more. We don't have enough water, drinking water. The network is overwhelmed, more or less, and overburdened. We need more. We need nearly 10 tons of food every day. In the past, we only needed 8 tons. We have tons of wastewater. We have tremendous amounts of wastewater and of waste. We cannot cope with this. We have tremendous amounts of waste and wastewater. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and nevertheless, we cannot cope with the refugees, and we cannot give them what we want to give them. We want to perform all these tasks, but this is very difficult. The Syrian refugees, of course, burden us also with regard to employment. They're looking for jobs. They're exploited by some entrepreneurs. They are paid minimum wages, and we would be happy if the international community could support us so that the Lebanese society can cope. The Lebanese society is now also suffering. We have unemployment. We suffer from not enough resources, inadequate infrastructure to cope with this large influx. So we have become expelled ourselves in our own country because of the situation that we have to cope with. In order to find solutions, and now let me talk about the host society and the refugees. I should like to repeat, we need sustainable development plans. We need support so that the Lebanese society and also the Syrian refugees can see that something is happening, because only in this way they can be motivated to take action themselves and to see the light at the end of the tunnel and to see that they have a chance, that they have an opportunity, they will be given the rewards. In addition, Something has to be done in order to establish, build peace. We would like to see a world in which the coming generations, boys and girls, can live in peace, that they can live in affluence, and that everywhere in this world, both in the Arab world but also in Europe or in America, there will be peace. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address this meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Nazem, Mayor of Marich. Permit me now to add something. I should like to say that whenever a mayor from the Lebanon says that society also argues that all the resources have been overtaxed and that something has to be done, then this is a very strong statement. And we hear that in Austria as well, because in Austria we hear the argument, we are overtaxed, we are overwhelmed. Mr. Youssef Al-Shava, you are the deputy mayor of the city of Amman in Jordan. The province of Amman is also a very large province in the region, so it is both a city and a province. Will you please share with us the interaction with your Syrian refugees? I should like to thank the initiators and the organizers of this conference. A cordial welcome to all. I'm very happy that this very delicate issue is being dealt with, and permit me also to simply start here by quoting that these trains had taken our grandparents to the Middle East, but today these trains transport people who have suffered a lot, but they want to go to other places in order to find a better life. And we have the initiative now. We have also these safety jackets here. They have become a symbol of what is happening, a symbol that our children, our families, and our all other brothers and sisters can cross this sea and come to other countries. We now have 9.5 million inhabitants. In Amman, we have about 2 million refugees, and perhaps even more. We only can quote the official figures. I think they are really more than in Jordan. I want to talk only very briefly about Jordan. We are facing tremendous challenges. It was very difficult for us to cope with these challenges, to take these up, and today it is no longer possible that we can deal with all cases in the way we would like to deal with. You know that Jordan suffers from a constant shortage of water. It is the fourth poorest country with regard to water supply, and this means that Jordan depends entirely on introducing all types of energy, electricity, gas, and water. We have to import all that. All these resources, and this need exists. This need for water can no longer be satisfied. And also with regard to education, schools for Syrian children, we have not the facilities. We cannot offer schools for all these refugee children. With regard to the health sector, in the past, Jordan tried very hard to offer free services in the health sector. And today, Jordan still performs this task, and it has assumed the moral responsibility for providing health services to the refugees, in contrast to some other countries. And I would like to wish that some states who argue that they will not admit refugees anymore, it's not their responsibility, I would really like to wish that these states would think about the problem. It's not only our problem. It's not only the problem of the neighboring states. It's a problem of the entire world. And therefore, it is the responsibility of the whole world to deal with this responsibility in an effective manner. As I said before, the inhabitants of Amman total 4.3 million, and we have 450,000 Syrian refugees. 130,000 of these are officially registered, and many others are living in this large region. And of course, they also make demands. They say they need water. They produce wastewater, so the sewage system is overtaxed. We have a high degree of unemployment as well, and so Jordan suffers a loss. Many Jordanians are looking for jobs, and now the Syrians on top of the job seekers. So in the simple handicrafts, we have Syrians who compete with the Jordan population. This, of course, influences the middle section of society. So there is a threat of poverty for all these people living in Amman, but also in other parts of Jordan. We would like to hope that the international community of states would assume more responsibility. In accordance with statistics, we say that asylum and Jordan for more than 70 years has dealt with millions of Syrian, Palestinian, and other refugees, but now also to a greater extent more and more Syrian refugees. And in statistics, you can read that it takes about 25 years to integrate these refugees. We have been working with refugees for 70 years, as I've already pointed out, and we would really need support, and we would like to ask you to support us. And today in Jordan and Lebanon, we have the two states that suffer most from the Syrian civil war and the crisis, and we need a political solution to this crisis in order to be able to support refugees in a sustainable manner and to offer them a way out of their current situation. If I talk only about Amman, a city which has 431,000 refugees. So we have no refugee camps or tent camps. We try to find flats, and all of them are accommodated, but this overtaxes the resources of our city. So please let us all listen carefully. Let us get the message of the Syrian refugees. A Syrian refugee does not want more than the basic rights. Syrian refugees want the fundamental rights to be respected, the right to education, to health services, to a just and fair life. In Jordan, we have strategic plans, and we are trying to get water from the south to get it to Amman, to transport the water to the north, and this cost more than $1 billion. And nevertheless, we are still suffering from a shortage of water. The whole demographic composition in many cities in Jordan has changed totally. In many cities in Jordan, we have more refugees than the original population. And of course, these are challenges that are very, very far-reaching, and we have to cope with these. We all have to find solutions. We have to deal with this, but at the same time, we need to respect international law. And I should like to ask once again that we take action. And thank you very much that we can pass on our message. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Youssef Al-Shaba. Mr. Hassan Al-Rahiba. He is the mayor of Al-Jimal in Jordan. Mr. Youssef is from the capital city, and Mr. Mijal is a place, and I'm sure that nobody knows where this place is, Al-Jimal. Mr. Saka said he knows, but all the others do not know where this place is. Many of you in this room will nevertheless know Al-Jimal, because here you have the Al-Satari refugee camp. It is the largest refugee camp in Jordan today. And Mr. Hassan, how do you share the experience in Jordan?
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and those who are welcome. Good morning to my colleagues here. Thank you very much for inviting me to the conference, and I really hope that we can arrive at positive results and help Syrian refugees. When we talk about Syrian refugees, we do not only talk about Syria, but we talk about refugees from all around the world. There are lots of countries who have refugees, who provide assistance to refugees, and we in Jordan, well, we represent a country that, together with the Lebanon, has, so to speak, suffered most from the influx of refugees. As you know, in Jordan, we have the Al-Satari refugee camp, and all organizations of civil society, NGOs, and government organizations try to undertake efforts to make sure that it works. Well, it can house 80,000 refugees. The border with Syria is 375 kilometers long, and this relatively long border is a border which was crossed by many refugees who fled their home country. And it is our task to work with these people. They came from Dara, from Reef Damascus, from the region of Damascus. They came from Homs, from all the regions in Syria which suffered by the civil war and were mostly affected by a civil war which, well, has been provoked, so to speak, by many countries around the world, if I may use it and say it that bluntly. And the way we assist Syrian refugees has been substantial, and it has cost a fortune. And Jordan will always assist refugees. But however, we are already affected by the impact. In the region around Al-Jimar have, well, provided the entire infrastructure to the refugee camp in Al-Satari together with international organizations on a daily basis. This refugee camp requires more than 4,200 cubic meters of water. And so we all joined forces to make sure that we can provide for these refugees, absolutely in contrast to what we see in many European countries where there is no such solidarity, and many countries do not have this willingness and readiness to help Syrian refugees. But, you know, when dealing with Syrian refugees, we have to absolutely observe and respect human rights. There always has to be a humanitarian approach. There are international agreements, international conventions. The Geneva Convention of 1951 is a set of rules on how to properly deal with refugees in Al-Jimal. Since 2011, since the onset of the crisis, we've had actually, an economic loss. Our budget was negatively impacted. By now, it is $3.5 million that have accumulated. $25 million in terms of losses have been generated. And, well, this figure consists of loans that have been granted to us, money that has been advanced to us. And, well, this is something we bear because there is always the humanitarian aspect, and we believe that we have to help these refugees. This is much more important than anything else, much more important than material, money issues. And if somebody asks me for concrete examples, for humanitarian examples, to provide examples of the assistance we make available to refugees, let me mention that apart from what I have already said, it's not only I, as the representative of a city, the people of Al-Jimar, the organizations of Al-Jimar have opened their homes. People, for instance, moved together in one flat, and the other flat that was vacated for Syrian refugees. So, because what is it all about? It is about the human aspect. It is about the humanitarian aspects. We are neighbor. We are one people. And this is why I would really love to see Europe. I would really wish to see Europe if acting similarly. I know that lots of European friends are already supporting us, but we require more support. We need more sustainable support in order to help the refugees in our region, in the Middle East, and not only to help those in Europe. Well, the civil war in Syria has developed into a crisis that concerns the world as a whole. Europe also has to assume responsibility in this connection. This is a crisis for which we can only find a solution within the international community, and also the trade unions, the socialists, the left of Europe. We would ask the left of Europe to oppose those right-wing extremists. And this is no secret. There are right-wing extremists, and we hear that on a daily basis in the news. But I believe that those who call for human approach, for humanity, and I believe that they will take the upper hand. They will be stronger than the others. Those voices are louder. Well, we also are striving to make ends meet, also in terms of budget. We also suffered major economic negative impacts, and I would like to appeal to our European friends to assist us, to support us, well, by providing direct or indirect support to the neighboring countries, to really providing support and relief to Jordan and Lebanon. So today we would celebrate the 105th birthday of Bruno Kreisky. Well, Bruno Kreisky, and Bruno Kreisky, this outstanding personality. There was a slip of tongue. I apologize. I said Berlusconi instead of Bruno Kreisky. I apologize, says the mayor. So Bruno Kreisky. And thank you very much, Yusuf Shohari. And now permit me to ask a female voice to take the floor, a female voice from Syria. So in order to be sure that our discussions about Syria and refugees will not only be addressed at the general level, or that Syrian refugees will just be addressed in the third person, but we want to give them a face. We want to give the refugees a say. A warm welcome to Mai Al-Ai, a Syrian activist. 2 months ago, she came to Austria. She's a young lady from the city of Dera, where all these events have started. From Dera, she came to Austria, and I would like to ask her for her experience, to share with us her experience. What makes a young lady who has graduated from university to leave her home country and to come to Austria? Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And my asylum procedure started 5 years ago, and I tried to summarize it within 5 minutes. Well, as every young person, every young woman, every young man in Syria, I witnessed the events. I'm from the city of Dara, where the events started. There were shellings, bombardments, and we as students decided then, after it was not possible to attend the university in Dara, we decided to go to the university in Damascus. So we were commuted, we graduated successfully from university, and then we decided we cannot stay silent. We cannot just accept what is going on, but we decided to contribute and to work. We work with an organization that helps young mothers, small children and babies, and we helped them for 2 years. Sometimes we were not even able to go from where we lived to this relief center to provide assistance to young mothers, babies, and little kids. And we always felt that these mothers, these kids, they were forced to leave their homes, to seek shelter somewhere else, to go to school. And since in Syria there was no opportunity for us to live, then we decided to leave Syria. We then fled. We went from Syria to the Lebanon. At the beginning, we thought that the border was open, but actually, the second war started there. This was the, psychological war for asylum. We were asked, well, where do you want to go on? Have you found a smuggler? Have you got a boat you want to cross with the Mediterranean? And it was really humiliating to have to answer these questions. We came to the Lebanon, we came to Turkey, and then the next part of the Odyssey continued. Human smugglers, well, they exploited us. Our terrible situation. They really forgot that we had to leave a war region. We then came to Greece, and there we also found it difficult. Then we went on to Macedonia. There we also faced major difficulties. And then we were, well, transported by buses and trains to Serbia. And there in Serbia, we were really pushed into trains, but there was no space, there was no room in the trains. So we were really like fish in cans. And everything we just wanted was to find a safe place. And it was just taking one step after the other, and we really did not know how our future would look like. We had no idea about our future destiny. There was this path, and we just took one step after another from one country to the next, and we did not know where we would end up. After 2 or 3 hours, we arrived at some other place, at some other village, and there we met other refugees who were staying there. And then we heard about a small boy, and this small boy tried to encourage us, and he said, "It will no longer take long. You will soon arrive at the place where they will help us." There was an old man who helped us. He even helped us walking. He said, "Well, continue. Help will be provided." I do not want to provide too many details, but as a woman, well, during this flight, I just forgot that I was a woman. I was just trying to flee my home country. I forgot my female side. But let me use this opportunity and really thank NGOs, charity organizations, for the help they provided. There were charity organizations in the individual countries that even told us what to do, because the state authorities didn't tell us anything. Well, this was an omission on the part of the government authorities. Nobody from the official side told us where to go from one place to the other. So, and in Austria, I would like to thank the project Balsam that is part of the Organization of Arab Women. It is a small project, but nevertheless, they try to help us they try to help Syrian refugees in Turkey, particularly women. And as is the case with the neighboring cities and neighboring states in Syria, who also are affected by a major influx of refugees, I am aware of the fact that people are somehow tired of taking us in. We are also tired of this war. We would really love to see the countries of the world support Syria so that we finally have peace, that there is peace. Thank you.
شكرا ماي.
Thank you, Mai. I know that it is not easy for you. It's not easy for a human being, and it's not easy for a woman to describe such experiences. An experience that must have been very painful, an experience that hits the very core of a personality and vulnerates and every story of any refugee contains a lot of suffering. Every story is such that as if the refugee would have to undress in front of the community of states and to provide answers. So I know how difficult this is. I was close to crying because I see many young people from Syria in the audience who also had a similar fate. But I'm also very happy that young people are here today because and particularly that Syrian refugees also participate in this conference. That is very important for me. I should like to thank all Syrian refugees for their attendance. Thank you very much that you have taken the time to come to our conference. Once again, a cordial welcome. Such a conference could not be crowned by success if you were absent. So, dear participants, dear audience, you have now heard the reports of 4 mayors. You have listened to mine, and all host societies and host countries and all those human beings who are fleeing are tired. And nevertheless, each and every one starts a new day every day, tries to continue the path of hope, and tries to give support to the refugees. But this is possible only and is successful only because there are many NGOs, there are many organizations, and the civic society that succeed in supporting authorities. Permit me now to give the floor to some voices who come from organizations operating in these regions. So these organizations developed plans in order to support the mayors and the communities in dealing with the influx of refugees. I give the floor to John Wan from Lebanon. You have also been instrumental in supporting refugees, and you have published a folder with support for mayors and communities in connection with well, we are working out plans, and our work began in 1993. We started in Lebanon, and when we look back on the year 2013, we will see that at that time the Syrian conflict already had lasted for 2 years. We had already a lot of Syrian refugees at that time, and at that time in Lebanon we asked ourselves what we should do with the refugees. There were no decisions, there were no rules, no legal regulations, and we worked in Lebanon, and in the course of this work we were able to reduce the pressure on the communities. We tried to believe that the international NGOs and local NGOs would not only perform the task of supporting refugees, but also to understand the problems, to deal with the problems per se, and also to attack the root causes of these problems. And here the idea was born that a study should be compiled in order to get an idea of how to deal with the refugees. We selected 12 communities in the north, south, and east, and we had some communities that could not cope with the influx of refugees, and we really mixed these communities. We had communities that coped very well with the refugees and others which did not cope. So we had altogether 500 villages and small local authorities in the Lebanon, and only 500 are local communities. And many of these communities, or of these, sometimes we have small offices that do not have enough staff or no staff at all. Some community have only 3,000 people to work for them, and so we had to check how the crisis was coped with, and we also analyzed how existing support and services were offered to refugees. And we also talked with Syrian refugees, and we talked to the civil societies in the host country. And we had to bring together all these ideas. I do not want to go into details. We could, of course, indicate the link to the studies. We will do that via Viola. Viola would like to do that. So We also talked at the beginning with international and local organizations, and the demand was heard everywhere, namely that we need more transparency in dealing with the different communities, because very often communities offered something and promised something but did not implement what they had promised. Sometimes it happened that an organization promised something and did not deliver this promise, and on the other hand, the NGOs demanded something, and local and international organizations wanted more transparency in the implementation of the planned measures. With regard to the donor organizations and communities, I should like to say we had a problem. Most projects lasted only for 1 year, a maximum, or for 6 months. But this led to a situation where many organizations only built up projects for a short term and implemented these projects only for a very short term. For example, we had the problem with water, and we asked ourselves, is it better to simply distribute water bottles, or would it be better to have a more sustainable solution, to look for a possibility to improve the sewage system and to get more water supply? So we asked ourselves what we could do, what would be preferable, a sustainable solution or another one. And very often we were convinced that this is necessary to cooperate very closely with the communities, because in many cases the communities were the ones who offered the technical support. We also addressed ourselves to the private sector, because many things that we needed came from the private sector, and we needed the private sector also in order to create jobs and to give opportunities to refugees to get employed. We also set up a decentralized system of support. So we had a decentralized system in the individual communities, and we also found out that it was necessary to rely to a much greater extent on planning and on coordination and on networks between the different communities. So we concentrated on these networks. Sometimes we had communities that implemented projects, but the other NGOs did not know about the implementation of these projects. Sometimes the communities did not wait for the donors to give them support. So we demanded that it would be preferable that the communities would not always wait and see, but that they should directly contact the donor organizations. All these things are described in detail in this manual, the manual for better interaction with the refugees. And we concentrate on two matters, namely on good governance and on the better building of capacities of the communities. So good governance and capacity buildings are the key words. Another area that we had to analyze was the better and more active and more efficient cooperation between the different bodies, the communities and the NGOs, and it is necessary also to involve the refugees to participate in various projects. And there's another example: in every local society or community, 10 people should be elected. Also, of the refugees, 10 people should be selected or chosen to deal with the existing problems. So this is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, Mr. George. And Mr. George Antoon, and I should like to ask you now to tell us about all these proposals later in the World Cafes. Perhaps you can talk about these proposals during the World Cafes, because you didn't have enough time to report now on these. We will stay in Lebanon, and we give the floor to Mababusta Habitat. Perhaps you want to talk about Habitat and its activities in Lebanon. I will speak English. Nun, im Jahr 2010 hatten wir
Their plan for Lebanon had projected for Lebanon to host in 2030, which is a population of 5.3 million. With weak governmental institutions and the lack of a robust national strategy to guide the response, in Lebanon, the UN agencies and international organizations have taken the lead. Municipalities were at the forefront of the response, so they had refugees at their doorsteps demanding basic services, host communities as well. However, they lack the needed capacity in order to respond to such a huge surge of refugees. So I will give you a case study of Gaza in West Bekaa. This is just to give you an idea of the figures. This area has hosted, the population in this area increased by 325% due to the surge of refugees. And you can imagine how much this has had impact on all the different sectors. I will just give you other few figures. It had increased the solid waste production by 195%, wastewater production by 163%, and water by 163% as well. It is important to note that they still had the same municipal budgets, however, they had increase in donor funding. So what did UN Habitat do? UN Habitat works at the regional and local levels mainly. Since we have more than 1,000 municipalities in Lebanon, we have 53 unions covering more than 800 municipalities. So unions are when municipalities come together, they have thus a more larger scale that they can work on, they have more capacities. So we have established regional technical offices under unions of municipalities, around 10 in Lebanon. And these address the regional scale, strengthen local governance, enhance service delivery, and mainstream plant interventions, because they are made of local experts, and they guide the unions from emergency response to planning. At the local levels, we just piloted 6 local development committees because we realized that it's very important for us to work at the municipal level or at the community level to integrate refugees and communities in planning for their response. And also this would enable us to strengthen the coordination between the local and regional levels. So what are the challenges at the national level? First of all, the large refugee population is of course a challenge. We had also in Lebanon contradictions in the statements of various ministries or national actors. So some ministries or national actors wanted to respond directly. Others shied away from the response because they believe that refugees will go back in a year or two. Furthermore, the different patterns of refugee settlements in Lebanon was particularly a challenge because we had some refugees in urban areas, other refugees in informal tent settlements, other refugees in rural areas. So in urban areas, it is more difficult to respond to refugees because it's harder to locate refugees in urban areas, and also it's more expensive to provide them with services. Established coordination frameworks at the level of the humanitarian country team or at the level of the sector working groups have not sufficiently involved local authorities in any structured information sharing or discussions. And finally, at the national level, the key challenge is the lack of updated and shared data, and this is something that predated the crisis. So what are the challenges at the regional and local levels? Politics plays a key role in impacting development by local authorities in Lebanon. Also, working with municipalities could really depend entirely on the vision of the mayor in Lebanon, so this is a challenge for us as well. The existing administrative setups do not respond to the needs of the refugees, so at what scale do we operate and how do we coordinate between the different scales? Also something that I have mentioned, which is the lack of planning, technical and financial capacities of local authorities to respond. And finally, the challenging or weak coordination between international organizations and local authorities. So we had some agencies working at the level of unions, others with ministries, others with municipalities. So how do we coordinate between all of them? Finally, some reflections for the way forward. The humanitarian response to the Syrian crisis has unfolded by implementing the same logic that guided refugee policies in the 1950s, according to Alexander Betts. So at a time when the world faces a record of 60 million refugees, according to UNHCR, 70% of which are in protracted crisis scenarios, it is very crucial for us to rethink the interventions that we are providing. So some elements to think of as we move forward are what are the optimal ways to integrate refugees and communities and plan with them, not just for them. How do we rethink the scales at which humanitarian responses operate? So at which scales of urban governance, at which physical scales do we operate? And we need to consider also area-based responses or response plans, not just work in parallel on different sectors. And finally, we need to strengthen coordination between international aid agencies, especially in the way we address local governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Marwa. So it seems the experience of Mercy Corps and UN Habitat, if you may allow me, show us ليه أنا هلا أخذت منك مروة وكملت بالإنجليزي. عم بتفرجونا إنه إحنا عارفين جزء كبير من التحديات.
You have just reflected something. You have shown us that many of these challenges, of course, are well known, but you are reminding us of these challenges. On the one hand, the importance of integration, the significance of coexistence, of cooperation between the host society and the refugee community, and the significance of coordination with international and local organizations. Mr. Mohammed, your experience in Jordan, do you have similar answers, or did you have other experience as an organization in Jordan? You're working in this area.
In the name of God and the merciful, I would like to thank at the beginning the organizers and initiators of this conference. Well, I would also like to thank my colleagues and everybody present and everybody around this round table, the Hashemite Kingdom. The Hashemite organization I represent was set up in 1990, and we want to provide assistance to people who require assistance. Today, we are active in 37 countries. We provide humanitarian relief and assistance. At the beginning in Darfur, we are also active in Somalia, in Afghanistan, and in other countries. Well, this brings me to the issue of Syrian refugees. You have all spoken about the Syrian refugee crisis as a consequence of the so-called, in this case, Arab Spring. And in Syria in March, I think in March 2011, events started. And when the first Syrians knocked at the door of the people in Lebanon and in Jordan and asked us to open the doors, well, everybody, and also in Syria, thought that the whole thing will be over after 2 months, as was the case in Tunisia, for instance. And this is the way how we dealt with the crisis. In the beginning, we left it over to the community of Al-Ramfa, which is at the border, and was the first one to take on refugees. And we also left it to people from Jordan to open their houses, apartments to Syrian refugees. Well, our organization, in fact, took the first step, and I really mean it literally, the first step in the region of Al-Ramfa. And this step was taken on the 15th of July 2011. We started building the refugee camp Al-Ramfa. The whole construction work took roughly 3 months. Georges Antoun helped me at the time. We often went to have a look at the works, at the construction works. We tried to coordinate try to find out what was necessary and so on. But what I would like to focus on, apart from providing assistance, is the dignity of the Syrian refugee. Right from the onset on, we have tried to respect and preserve this dignity. They are our brothers, sisters. Often we have family relations. They are, well, our brothers and sisters-in-law often. But the problem was much larger. And the problem is much larger than of a dimension a small community in Lebanon, for instance, could cope with. And Turkey, for instance, is also overtaxed. At the beginning, for instance, Turkish organizations, Turkish authorities helped the refugees. Then the Red Cross stepped in. And the municipalities, well, the citizens and also the authorities in Jordan have been used to welcoming and hosting refugees for 17 years. But today we are actually facing major challenges, and these are the challenges the Lebanon is also facing. One of these challenges, and this has already been mentioned, well, is the educational sector. Currently, we have 47,000 Syrian pupils and students who are being who push into the educational system. We have roughly 300,000 children who push into the school system in Jordan, and we think that in a few years we will have a so-called lost generation. These were the kids who were not able to attend school in Syria. Now they are in refugee camps, and there they have no opportunity to go to school either. And yeah, I do not ask for financial assistance, material assistance. No, I do not ask for assistance in kind, but I just ask you to look at that problem, to become aware of that, to look at the root cause of this crisis. Those Syrian refugees, they also seek hope. So, well, they have come to Europe. When they knock at the doors of Europe, then they also take along with them the hope that the doors might be opened to them and, well, assistance might be provided to them. I've talked to lots of Syrian refugees, and all of them said, well, naturally, they would prefer to stay in Syria or in Jordan or in Lebanon. These are countries which are similar. They have the same language, they share a culture, and these Syrian refugees, well, they are forced to leave these countries, also the Lebanon and Jordan, when fleeing. And just consider the relief services provided, the comparison between 2011 and 2015, for instance. And here you see that this assistance provided by international organization and the community of states, well, really was cut down to a third between 2011 and 2015. As my colleague Georges has just told you, that in the meantime, we are faced with a situation where people are aware of the facts and they just deny realities. Even facts are being denied. The Syrian refugees, they are, as I mentioned before, they are part of our families. We would like to assume responsibility for them. And please help us. Don't leave us at our own devices. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. I think as regards education and training, well, this is a major issue. Thank you for addressing this issue, because it is important to each and every region, because unfortunately the majority of the refugee is at an age where they still have to go to school. We heard in Jordan 300,000 school pupils and students, and out of that in the Lebanon, only 1,000 of the refugees in the Lebanon are able to go to school. And just let me explain briefly how this focus on Syrian refugees, well, what impact that also had to Syrians who live in other countries or have lived abroad for a longer period of time. And we also want to consider them. So, and this brings me to Mr. Wali. Your experience in Jordan, and have you had similar experience comparable to Mr. Mohammed, like colleagues from Lebanon? Are you facing the similar situations, similar challenges? I would like to thank the Bruno Kreisky Forum for organizing the conference, for taking the initiative to organize such a conference. It is high time to have such an event. We have seen this crisis for 5 years, and soon it will enter its 6th years. I think we have reached a limit, as my colleagues have already said, that the host societies can no longer cope with more refugees, neither from security nor from humanitarian points of view. So today the situation is not such as you can go back to business as usual. The world has changed, the situation has changed. We have to find more and better solutions. We have to give it more thought, and we have to focus on things, work in a focused and concerted manner. We have to take things seriously. We mustn't forget this cut in international humanitarian assistance. This is a disaster. On the one hand, we see this constant decline in humanitarian assistance, and on the other hand, we have augmenting numbers of Syrian refugees. So we are faced with a new phenomenon we have to deal with, and particularly because there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We do not see any initiative emerging there at the horizon that could indicate the way where we should go to. And I believe that we also have to take a different approach. Well, we've heard a lot about the suffering, about the dire straits they are in, the refugees and also the host society. But it's also necessary to look at the other aspect, considering refugees as an opportunity within this challenge. Well, it is a challenge for sure. But when we succeed in accepting this challenge and tackling it appropriately, then this challenge will develop into an opportunity for us. It will develop into an opportunity for the host society in Europe as well. And with international assistance, I believe it will be possible that host societies will be able to understand that these challenges can be turned into opportunities. At the conference scheduled for the 4th of February, a pledge conference for refugees, Jordan will contribute a paper to this conference. And during this conference, participants want to speak with the players, with the World Bank, other organizations. We need to exchange opportunities, ways and means in order to identify new approaches. We strive to help, well, the cousin, the brother, the sister-in-law. Well, you can accommodate them for a certain time, but soon the guest himself, herself, they also want to take the initiative, and we should support them in that. Jordan currently is assuming international responsibility, and I don't think that it's fair. It's not just to leave Jordan out there alone. It must not shoulder this responsibility all alone. We have invested a lot. We, in fact, incurred millions of dollars in debt, and up to 90% of the budget consists of debts. And just because Jordan strives to invest into infrastructure, because Jordan has undertaken every effort to provide services in order to make sure that the needs of refugees are met. And, well, this does not only mean that in Jordan the situation is just that satisfying the needs of refugees is at risk. The infrastructure itself is at risk, and even society. And another important issue is children. Children are children, ladies and gentlemen, irrespective of where they come from Syria, Jordan, or Austria. Children are children. And when the Syrian child goes to school and they get a school bag with notebooks, with pencils, and even a snack, then it's not fair that the Jordan kid doesn't get such a school bag. Children do not understand that we have to create equal opportunities, so provide the services which are granted to the Syrians. They should also be provided to the host communities' children, to the host countries' children in Jordan, for instance, or in Lebanon, because we want a win-win situation at the end of the day, and this is important. And we also have to convince the donors community that it is a high time to support us, to assist us. International development organizations, international development assistance must be provided. And, well, it amounted to $135 million in 2015. This was the development assistance given from the wealthy to the poor. In Jordan, development assistance is 62.1 billion annually, and if you just take 1%, it's 135 billion for Jordan. If you would earmark that for Jordan, you would have helped a lot. Thank you very much. So please permit me to read out a question, because lots of questions have been presented, and this is a question that has been addressed several times. A question I should like to address to Udo Jans. How could the international community of states assist the regions, the neighboring countries? Thank you very much. I would also like to thank the organizers, and I would also like to thank you. Thank you. On May, I would also like to thank her, because what she has told me is not just a single case, but this is what is taking place on the escape, on the routes, on the flight routes, and also on the open sea. I would also like to particularly thank the civil societies who have been the first responders in this dramatic refugee situations. And I should also like to thank the mayors who have undertaken an all-out effort, more than could have ever been expected, and also their personal effort is massive and intense. So I should also like to thank you very much for all the things you have done. The major surprise is that the influx of refugee was not stopped by the onset of winter this year, but that figures are still increasing, not at the high levels we saw in October or September of last year, but nevertheless, the figures have continued to increase. For me, this clearly underlines the fact that the situation on the ground has not changed, that the root causes have not changed. This is very important. We must not forget, because looking at the last report prepared by the mission of inquiry, it really reads like a horror story: bombs, shells, with an incredible impact on the people who lived in the region where the bombs were dropped, but also for the internally displaced. You must not forget, more than 50% of the entire population is internally displaced. They have no other opportunity than to take the necessary step to flee at least their home region, if not their home country. It is never a decision you take lightheartedly. Many people will think 10, 20 times before taking these steps, because they are very well aware of the fact that it will be much more difficult to return to their home country, should it actually be possible, or should they be permitted or allowed to return to their home country. The picture we see there at the background might have become the symbol for this exodus from Syria, with the vests you see there at the back. What just few of us have known, and I learned it from civil society, that unscrupulous people, smugglers, sell vests that are not filled with life-saving material, but with material that sucks in water, and this means that you drown faster when a boat capsizes. And this is the reality. You mustn't forget, this is the reality. And the answer, the response, well, I see and hear from politicians, from leading figures who comment on this issue, seems to be a race towards the smallest common denominator. And this is definitely not the answer, the response we require. The new High Commissioner for Refugees, who only took office at the beginning of the year, Philip Grandi, who knows the situation in the Palestine very well, because this used to be his previous task, was the first one in order to set a sign. He visited the neighboring countries. He was in Jordan, he was in Lebanon, and there on the ground he gave an expression of his solidarity, and also with, and also he also expressed his appreciation of the way in which the neighboring countries have welcomed refugees and the grants given by UNHCR, which are immediately allocated in order to enable a dignified life as far as possible under these circumstances. And well, the funds and grants allocated, they are never able to live up to requirements. Looking at the figures of 2015, then the figures in Lebanon and in Jordan are, short by 45%. Programs have to be cancelled. These are no life-saving programs because this remains a priority. But we must never forget what we have just heard is an absolute truth. The education of an entire generation, a lost generation of children who really will find it very difficult to catch up on what they have lost in terms of education, and this might become root causes for other issues. And an use of what I called inhuman deterrence can and must not be the answer provided by Europe and not by Austria. And I believe that Austria, and particularly civil society, has shown what you can achieve and what you can do if you really tackle the issue in a wholehearted manner. And I think this is the approach which will be required for the future, because it doesn't look as if we would be facing major changes in the course of this calendar year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have just received the first hint that only 20 minutes are left for our discussion round. Mr. Christian Berger, one of the questions. I change over to Arab. One of the questions that you have to answer deals with the issue as to how Europe can help the neighboring states. I also know that you are one of the participants who will also participate in the February meeting. Could you perhaps report on your experience?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
To this panel. I think the best help that Europe can offer is to help actually solve the conflict. This must be priority number one. I think this is what we heard from May early on. Solving the conflict, ending the carnage in Syria, maybe is the most important thing that the international community and Europe can do. But we also have heard the plea by Jordan and by Lebanon to help them, and we fully understand countries that under this tremendous burden of refugees, but also a very difficult political situation in Lebanon, need the assistance and support by the international community and by the European Union. Queen Rania was in Brussels last week. Prime Minister Salam is in Brussels today to make this very same request and this very same plea. It also comes hand in hand, as we have just heard, on the 4th of February there's a conference in London hosted by the United Kingdom, by Germany, Kuwait and Norway to look into this and to provide in particular support to Lebanon and to Jordan. When you look at the two countries, you have in both countries more than 1 million refugees. When you compare this to Austria, for example, that would mean also in Austria you would have 1 million refugees given the comparison in population figures. You have about 70% of the refugees women and children. You have a very fragile situation, as I said, in Lebanon. So what can we do? What can the international community do in order to respond to this? And this will be the theme of this conference in London. First of all, we welcome very much what Jordan is doing now. Jordan is changing, or has changed its policy, and is saying now that refugees should be also an opportunity. So it's moving away from refugees being a burden to refugees being a development opportunity for the country, but also for the refugees themselves when we provide the necessary assistance. So there's a holistic approach now developed, and we think by that you have a win-win situation for the refugees, for the host communities, for the country itself, but also for the international community. Now, what can we do in concrete terms? First of all, we have to help both countries and the refugees to have a dignified life. That means providing and continue to provide emergency assistance, humanitarian assistance. The European Union so far has spent 5 billion euros on humanitarian assistance to in response to the Syria crisis alone. So this is the biggest humanitarian operation by the European Union ever since the creation of the European Union. Secondly, we have to move from humanitarian assistance to sustainable development, as people have said, and resilience indeed of the communities, the host communities that are hosting the refugees. Now, just again, a couple of figures. You have about 60% of the refugees without education or without complete education. 15% only have secondary education. You have 50% of the households led by either females or elderly or adolescents. Again, a very important figure when you talk about sustainable development. This also means that, as we have heard, education is highly important. This education means that there won't be a lost generation. This means there won't be a long-term risk to the countries in the region and to the European Union. When you go to Satari camp, where we are funding UNICEF to run schools, you will see young kids in school between the ages of 6 and 10. You don't see older kids in school. The question is where they are. I don't even want to speculate where they are. So that's an issue that I think we all have to address, because this is a long-term risk to all of us. Public sector support for the host communities. They have to be treated the same way as refugees, absolutely. Public sector support would include not only education, health clinics, will include what we have heard early on, water, wastewater support, I mean, all the problems we know from Lebanon in particular, and energy supply. I mean, these are all issues that hopefully we will find the answers in London and the support from the international community. We're also trying to help the countries themselves. We're discussing with Jordan at the moment, for example, a better trade relationship. This is extremely important. So refugees who actually find work and their products can be then exported to the economic zones in Jordan. So all of this means that the European Union will hopefully take the lead in this, will take the lead in agreeing with both Jordan and Lebanon, because we also need something back from Jordan and Lebanon. What we need back from Jordan and Lebanon is exactly job opportunities, allowing the refugees to have access to the job market, supporting the education system, but also providing protection to the refugees. We saw during the Iraq refugee crisis in 2006 and 2007 that many parents did not want to register their kids because they were afraid that would mean they would be expelled from the country. But there, I think there's a changed situation, so protection of the refugee population is extremely important as well. But ending here, coming back, these are all hopefully temporary measures, because in the very end we need to end the conflict.
شكرا جزيلا سيد كريستيان باغا.
Thank you.
هنجل سمعنا من أكثر من شخص بهاي الجلسة ضرورة تغيير النظرة من العمل من الإغاثة.
It is necessary, as we've heard from some colleagues, to change the perspective. So let us now move away from merely humanitarian help, and we should go in the direction of development aid. What can Austria do? What does Austria do? Less humanitarian aid and more development aid.
Speak a few minutes, and it's not to be redundant with the EU, but as you rightly said, I mean, Austria has, as a donor, scaled up its humanitarian relief, but we strongly believe that the crisis can only be solved, or Austria as a small country can only really do or have an impact if we contribute to bigger EU programs. So our strategy was like also funding now and supporting the EU in its joint efforts. And one of these big pots where Austria is contributing is this Madat Fund. It's a big pot which has been created, which is now really like, as also a lot of speakers have already said, targeting really the infrastructure, the health system, the education system of Jordan, of Lebanon, and so on and so forth, where massive scaling up has to be done. The lost generation topic, school infrastructure, and so on needs to be targeted urgently. And last but not least, what I really liked was what you said about resilience and about seeing refugees as opportunity. I think behind every refugee, there is a story, there are skills, tremendous skills. Europe in the past has benefited strongly of refugees. I mean, we don't need to list up all the UNHCR lists about who have been refugees, who have contributed tremendously to the world. But I also believe that, in every human being you have a story, you have skills, and we need also programs, livelihood programs, and so on and so forth, to really strengthen those skills, starting with the children, to also providing them with skills so that they can also contribute and constructively contribute to their host communities and to the livelihoods of their families. That would be it. Thank you very much.
شكرا كثير. شكرا.
Thank you very much. I should also like to thank these very brief statements, because we have little time left. The last voice we will hear is Margareta Mahler from Doctors Without Borders, and this. Not only Austria, this organization helps in Jordan and in Lebanon, but also in the countries of the refugee route. Will you please share your experience? It is a great pleasure for me to be able to talk. I'm a psychotherapist, and it was really interesting for me to listen here to your contribution. It was really interesting for me to listen. And thank you very much for giving me the last word in this panel. Well, Médecins Sans Frontières is primarily active in these regions and countries, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon. We must not forget Iraq. We are very active, and we are also in Syria. We are present there, and we support medical institutions. Unfortunately, we do not operate on a grand scale yet, but what is really shocking for us, the people whom we see in these countries have to be supported in medical terms, but then on their long route, on their flight, we see them again, or at least some of them, and we hear shocking stories, heart-moving stories, and I get very much fed up. I'm very angry when we, as an institution, particularly in mental health, we try to stabilize these people and make them overcome these traumatic experiences, and then all of a sudden, because of the flight, because of this long route, and because of these inhuman conditions, these people have to learn that they have to build up their dignity and their respect, and it's terrible. There are terrible deficiencies, and I do hope that this we will be able to help the refugees much better in this area. We in Médecins Sans Frontières published a report this week, and I can show it to you. This is based on our experience, medical experience, but also other experience based on the histories, on the stories of people in flight and people having arrived somewhere. And we see how great and how negative this interaction with them is in many cases, and to what extent this has an impact on their well-being and on their health. And they arrive in Austria and they suffer even more than they had suffered already in their home countries. So this is something which is terrible. I can show you the report. We simply describe what must be demanded. It is absolutely important that a safe route is offered for the flight. So we must safeguard the flight routes, and that on the borders asylum applications can be filed, that medical services are assured, and that people are treated with respect and in a dignified manner. Thank you very much. And I should like to thank all those who have made a contribution. And during this panel, I should like to thank all participants. I should like to thank them all for having observed the time limit. And will you permit me now, in my capacity as moderator, to single out some points of which I think would deserve more consideration. I believe that most of us talked about a particular thing. When we talk about Syria and Syrian refugees, then all of you have said that this is not a final solution without a political solution. A political solution is the basis, and the basis of the political solution can overcome the humanitarian crisis. This not only applies to Syria, but also to some communities in the neighboring states. It is necessary to develop a vision of peace for the Middle East. So we need a vision that helps the people in the Middle East, that there is hope for a dignified life, life in peace. The second item I should like to single out, there is the need to take a fresh look at what refugees are suffering, displaced people are suffering, and asylum seekers are suffering. Namely, we have to depart from the argument that these people are a challenge. We should rather say these people are an opportunity. They can enrich our societies. The third item I should like to single out is the significance to activate communication and cohesion and the interaction between the host society and the refugees in order to strengthen all help and assistance. And the last item, which I should like to remind you of, is the following. Although all mayors and representatives of organizations have talked about the burdens that they have to shoulder, they all said or indicated that, and they still have the strength and the willingness to continue along this path. They still want to offer the services, improve this, and help people. As you have seen, there are many human beings, there are many people who asked questions via Slido. So perhaps we could get the questions and we can then provide answers. So will you please show us the questions? Many of these questions that have been asked focus on various topics that will be discussed in the various world cafes and in the workshops in these 2 days. So nevertheless, I should like to single out 3 of these questions. For example, the first question: how can you strengthen cooperation and reactivate or activate cooperation and to make it more efficient between the communities and the individual NGOs or international organizations? I should like to ask those who ask these questions to participate in the workshop dealing with this topic. A second question, which also deals with jobs and further work. So I should like to ask the person who asked this question to participate in this workshop. I should like to thank the mayor of the mayors from Jordan and Lebanon, and we are very proud that they have come, and we thank them for continuing along the same path and to participate in the second panel of today. Thank you very much. We will now have a coffee break. Thank you.